Welcome to Wise Heads, where some of the sharpest minds in business share practical thinking to help you build a better business and make better decisions. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by James Deysel. James has spent more than 20 years working across marketing and FMCG, helping build and grow brands across Australia and New Zealand. He's also someone who spends an unusual amount of time wandering supermarket aisles, finding interesting products and pulling apart why they work. From packaging and positioning to innovation, pricing, and what ultimately makes someone pick one product over another. But James has also become something of a case study in marketing himself. He's built a substantial personal following on LinkedIn and now has written Limitless LinkedIn, a book about how anyone can use the platform to build visibility, trust, and opportunity. So today we're talking about both. What makes a product stand out in a supermarket full of competing choices? What separates genuine innovation from simply launching another SKU? What can challenger brands learn from the best FMCG marketers? And increasingly, do some of the same rules we use to build product brands apply to building our own? James, thanks for joining me.
Good to be here, mate.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and the journey that's taken you through FMCG and marketing to where you are today.
I'm originally from South Africa, grew up in Joburg, started my career in FMCG in one of the largest FMCG companies over there, Clover. Was fortunate enough to jump over to Sydney with Mars, spent a couple of years with them, then into Suntory, then marketing, and the long version short as lifelong FMCG marketer, genuinely in love with the industry and everything that goes along with good marketing. And I love it so much that I've started my own consultancy this year called Make Marketing Better. And the mission is simple. Literally everything we can do to make marketing better, whether that's on personal branding or for the industry.
Anyone who follows you on LinkedIn will know that you spend quite a lot of time walking the supermarket aisles, finding interesting products and pulling them apart, why they work, what makes you stop. What is it that you've noticed recently through that exercise?
One of the things that makes a product jump out, Adam, is if it is consumer-led. If you start with a consumer, you're solving a genuine consumer problem, and you build a brand and an offering from that point out, then it's going to work. However, there is a shadow to that. There are many reasons why things do not work at all on shelf. If you look at an average Coles or an average Woolies, you can get up to 30,000 SKUs. So it is remarkably tricky on a chaotic Saturday morning. Your trolley's running away from you. Kids are running all over the shop, but you just want to get your mission done. To have a brand stand out, be noticed, remembered, and understood, it takes a lot of discipline and it takes real marketing skill. And none of that happens if you don't have consumer centricity to begin with.
There are thousands of products fighting for our attention in a supermarket. What ultimately makes one product get picked up and another completely ignored?
Well, let's unpack that. Many things can contribute to that, right? But if you look at the fundamental principles underpinning that, so we just mentioned be consumer-centric, start there, but that leads to a long cascade of marketing technique and actions you got to go through. So if you start with your consumer, you will firstly see if there is actually a need or not for your product. You will then go and segment the market, do a bit of positioning, and find a way to create distinctiveness and relative differentiation for your brand to your competitive set. From there, only then do you begin to build a marketing plan. So product, place, and promotion and distribution. And from there, you actually then go and build a go-to-market plan. So with that, you then have a offering in market that will or will not stand out. And if you do that right, you will inherently get there. But along the way, Adam, there are many things that can corrupt that process. It could be launching NPD for the wrong reasons. It could be a broken innovation process, bad design, complex packaging. There's simply no need for your product. There's a me too, bad shelf positioning, pricing. So many things can dismantle a very good idea and make it not work in market. So you have to always dissect this a bit. Hence, a shopping trip for me is not a normal shopping trip. I spend an inordinate amount of time in the aisles, just analyzing and finding examples of good and bad of why these things work in market or not.
Let's start with packaging. When you look at packaging, what are the biggest mistakes brands tend to make?
Probably the biggest two would be just clutter and trying too hard to convey too much information too quickly on the front of the pack. So the analogy I like to use is if I throw a tennis ball at you, Adam, I guess you're going to be able to catch it. Or if I take a bucket full of tennis balls and just chuck them at you, you won't catch a single one. So the same is true for packaging. Brands that have so many claims, repetitive claims, a complex pack architecture. And if somebody's busy a busy shopper mission, chaotic environment. You don't even know if they know of your brand before they've entered the store. So for a shopper to process all of that information in a few seconds, it's all a brand gets, a few seconds, it's incredibly hard. And then the second thing is just a lack of mental availability. So the job of a marketer before a consumer reaches the shelf in FMCG is to build basic mental availabilities. Means a consumer knows of you and they more or less know what you are before they even get to the shelves and are in that purchasing environment. So your packaging design has to do a lot of the heavy lifting, but even a great design goes nowhere if you don't have any mental availability and it's completely blunt at all. It's just so much harder.
How do you secure mental availability?
So the first thing you need to do is be very clear about your brand positioning. What is your brand? Who is it for? What does it stand for? And please do not chop and change this. If you position your brand, please keep it consistent. Don't reposition it and relaunch 2 years later. From there, you need to understand your category entry points. What are the things that make people buy into the category at all? What needs are you solving? And then you go and decide, okay, with your brand that is designed the way it is, how do you make it distinctive? Because today there are many, many brands, tens of thousands of them. So it's very hard to do something truly differentiated. Very few people can come up with a novel product and a novel brand that nobody can copy. So your job is really to create distinctiveness. How is your brand different in a meaningful way to your direct competitor in that context? If you can do that, then your job is quite simply to remind consumers of this message consistently over and over, and not for weeks, not for a couple of months, and that's your campaign for the year and it's done. It's an always-on mission, and it should never cease, and it compounds over time as well. So building a mental availability is a long-term game, but only works if you've done the hard work up front.
Say I've got 3 brands of potato chips. They're all the same price. They are all the same taste. How then can you create differentiation when there's so many similarities between the outcome that you're selling?
That's exactly why we need marketing. We all like to think we're all rational human beings. We'll look at equal propositions and make a rational decision around which one's the better one. I'll assess quality, I'll assess price, and very often businesses make decisions as if that is true. And you know as well as I do, Adam, that is not how us humans work. We're erratic, emotional beings. And most of the decisions we make are driven by emotion. That is exactly why we need to build the brand. So if you go and take those 3 quite similar products, which by the way, that's always the case, you would get this in every category. Beneath the surface, virtually the same thing. The brand that's going to take the time to create a set of distinctive assets that looks different and distinctive, has different associations with it. The brand logo should obviously be clear, but the brand pack design could be a catchy slogan or another device, could be the advertising through TV, radio, out of home, social media, things that stick in your mind. That brand will be the one you're likely going to pick. If all other things are equal, you're going to lean towards the one you're more familiar with because that is mental availability. You come up first in the mind of the consumer before the opposition because brands have a utility. It is a trust mark and it gives you a shorthand to go, that's the one I know. I don't have time to go through all the options. I'm just going to pick the one I know. So that actually makes the case for marketing, in my opinion.
You've worked for some quite large FMCG companies. Try and put yourself in the headspace of a smaller one who has a more finite budget available to them. What advice would you give them in terms of splitting their budget towards short-term sales promotion, sales driving tactics versus brand building?
So the first piece of advice I'd go is please don't try and be a mini version of a big brand. It's going to guarantee your failure. And most small brands do this. They show up like a mega brand, copy them, but at a tiny scale, and they just get crushed in market. This balance between long and short is a fascinating one. Generally speaking, regardless of brand size, the work by Burnett and Field would suggest roughly 60% long, 40% short is the ideal way to build brand equity. Now, if you're a small brand, you can still apply that principle to an extent, but my advice would be try and concentrate your efforts. So if you have the privilege of being able to lock in a small geography, do it at a small scale, win well, and then expand, that's going to be better. But unfortunately, the way our market's structured, both in Australia and in New Zealand, everybody wants to win the lotto, get distribution in the likes of Coles or Woolworths, and you get ranging and you're distributed across 800 stores, but you've not done anything else. Nobody knows who you are. You're just another one of the 30,000 SKUs, and you get lost. And then unfortunately in desperation, the system then forces you to virtually do 100% short and price promote and try and drive sales, but they hardly ever build true brand equity and brand penetration. So those brands structurally set themselves up for failure if they do that.
You've said before that ultimately taste is king. Can brilliant marketing make a mediocre product successful, or will the product always catch up with you?
So if we say brilliant marketing means excellent marketing communication, so one of the 4 Ps, promotion, it will definitely help, but eventually, yes, it will catch up with you. You can have the best marketing communication in the world. You can reach many consumers and drive trial. But gosh, if they're going to try your product and the expectation you have set is not met, it's even a double whammy. It is worse to do that because now you set the expectation here and you get this experience. And we all have had this, right? You see a great ad or a great campaign. You have a certain mental map of what this product's going to be like, and then you get disappointed. It almost angers me to go like, I feel cheated. And you don't want that from your consumers. And there are differing degrees of what success means in products. Some products are designed to be economical and low value and cheap. That's fine. But if you're positioning something at a medium or higher end, you're just going to have more margin to invest. So yeah, always look at your product and make it fit for purpose.
You're constantly sharing on LinkedIn interesting new products and innovations that you come across, particularly in the confectionery space, I've noted. What separates genuine innovation from simply launching another SKU?
When you look at good innovation, the ones that work, I can clearly see the bigger picture and the bigger plan. So a very good example of that is in Australia, the MCO Beauty and Cadbury collab. So I did a post about that a while ago, and there was a lot of conversation, a lot of opinion about it. But many people made the mistake of just looking at the launch in isolation and making a judgment call. That's totally fine. It's what the post was about. But if you take a step back and consider everything else Mondelez have been doing, it is genius. And that's why I was such a big advocate for it. Because before they launched that collab, they had what was clearly a very well-oiled commercial calendar. They've had the big commercial launch of Cadbury and more in Australia. They've had other solid flavor rotates, Cadbury Oreo, Cadbury PB&J, which will give you the volume. They then had the other adjacent launches, Cadbury Finger. And they also had the Cadbury Monopoly campaign, which in terms of physical availability completely took over Coles and Woolies. And only after all of that did they do this cheeky little collab. And it's brilliant because it gave them an avenue to drive brand fame. It's very social media influencer forward, reflecting the changing media landscape. And most importantly, it gave them an opportunity to do a real market test. Who's ever tried watermelon chocolate before? If you did just another Cadbury flavor and it's watermelon chocolate on its own, nobody would have cared. But because it's part of this kooky collab and it's just wild and out there, it just works and people are inclined to go and try it. So they also get feedback. So that's the difference, Adam. It's when people have a big plan and the innovation serves a greater purpose.
I'm the founder of a packaged popcorn company. Would you recommend that I go to market with 6 to 10 different variants of that packaged flavored popcorn, or stick to a core range of 2 initially?
If we reduce it to just focus on the shelf for a second, I'd go default to at least 3. It's always a good rule of thumb. It's not universally applicable, but I always had a preference for at least 3 SKUs for a brand new launch. If you can get away with 4, of which you can put that 4th one as a rotational slot, you can negotiate a bit more with your buyers to go, well, we'll give you an exclusive flavor, we'll rotate this, here's a big plan. But 2 on its own, on a busy shelf, if you're a new brand, that is tricky, purely from a shelf stand-up point of view. There is a balance, right? If you have multiple sub-variants in your range, absolutely start with your core, do your core well, and then expand. And there's a couple of reasons for it. So you will be known for one thing and do it well. And if you're a small brand, that includes range. And then you have earned the trust of your consumers, but also your retailers. Because, okay, we gave you 3 facings of your core range. That's done well. Okay, next range review comes up. Now we can talk range expansion. The opposite is far worse. Oh, we gave you 8 facings and we have 3 different sub-variants. 2/3 of the range are absolute dogs. We're going to delete them, and now we're going to have a conversation around your margin because you cost us money, because we had all of these lost sales because your bad products have chewed up shelf space. A very good case study would be Boss Coffee from Satori. They launched a very tight core range, and in fact, only 2 flavors originally. And slowly but surely, that grew into a full range until the range matured. And now they have to enter their second horizon of growth. But do not overstretch when you launch. Very bad idea.
Can innovation actually make a brand weaker, if not done well, perhaps?
Bad innovation breaks down trust of your consumer, which is the worst sin, because now they don't necessarily want to consider you again because they were disappointed. Destroys retailer trust. So good luck for your sales colleagues and your sales team to go and convince them on the next launch. Because every time you miss the mark, you're going to erode trust of your buyers, and they are gatekeepers, whether we like it or not. And then thirdly, and probably the worst long-term, is it erodes your standing within your business. If you're a marketing function and you don't deliver winning innovation, your internal colleagues lose trust in you, and you're just a marketing team who doesn't work. That eventually snowballs pretty quickly, and then your own career becomes a little bit hot under the collar. So you want to be careful.
Marketers spend an enormous amount of time talking about loyalty and getting existing customers to buy more. Should brands actually be more obsessed with people who don't currently buy them?
Absolutely. This one is very definitive. There is very, very, very good evidence from Ehrenberg Bass and all of the work they've done. Penetration is by far the easiest, the cheapest, and the best way to grow your brand in FMCG. And there's still always a little bit of debate when you share these stats, but most consumers will buy your product in FMCG once a year. It's a binodal distribution curve, or if you want to sound very fancy pants, a Dirichlet distribution curve, which is basically, you can imagine the shape of a banana. On the y-axis, it shows the amount of times you've been purchased. On the x-axis, how many people. And you just show the amount of people who purchase you once, very high, and then twice, a bit lower, 3 times, much lower. And then when you get to 3 or 4 times a year, it's almost all just a flat line. And that is the key lesson for most marketers. Go and chase penetration with new consumers, and you will grow much quicker. It's far cheaper as well than trying to convince people to repurchase you and build loyalty. Loyalty is a very frail term in the world of FMCG marketing. I'd caution against it.
If I've got a good product, but I simply can't outspend the category leaders, how do I give myself a fighting chance of being noticed and chosen?
Yes, and this is advice I will always repeat to anyone working on a smaller brand. You're a smaller brand. You are not a large brand. You are not Coke. You are not Cadbury. You're not Unilever, you name it. You are a small challenger brand. Think and act accordingly. If you try and show up like a big brand and do all of the same things at a tiny scale, you are guaranteeing that you will fail, even though you might think it seems very sophisticated. So find ways to concentrate your efforts, do core principles very well, and show patience in how you expand. One of the biggest mistakes I see is when a small new entrant tries to show up like a Unilever, but they have founder's budget and they are guaranteed that they will be deranged in 6 to 12 months, unless the buyer feels very sorry for them and gives them a lifeline, which doesn't happen very often. So find ways to concentrate your efforts in terms of geography. Can you do a few things well in a very tight-knit geography, a metro area, a state? Do you have space where you can work more with independent retailers, not just Coles or Woolies, where you have corporate distribution and it goes out of your hands? And in your marketing communication mix, do a few things well. Don't go overkill and try and cover too many channels. Social media and influencer-based marketing might be a good lever for a founding brand. And the final piece of advice, you have a disproportionate impact for your corporate brand if you're a founder in a young business. So what I mean by that is work LinkedIn hard. It is not a distraction. It is not an area where you go and kill time. LinkedIn for a young new brand is so important because you're signaling to your buyers, potential new customers, and quite frankly, other people who might want to come and work for you one day. You're a brand on a mission with a purpose. So I'd be hitting that hard as well. And it could be all organic. You don't even have to pay for it.
Great. If you had $100,000 to launch a new FMCG brand within a competitive, existing and established category, where would you invest that in terms of media spend?
$100,000, it's not so little that it's meaningless, but it's not nearly enough that you can go and apply mass media principles to it. So assuming it's going to be in Australia, I would follow my own advice and I'd go and try and concentrate it around a specific market where that can give me the best bang for buck. I would avoid the most competitive spaces. So I'd avoid Sydney and Melbourne because trying to make $100,000 go anywhere in those markets is very hard. And if it's going to be within Sydney or Melbourne, I would focus on a couple of local areas within the metro. Probably best bang for buck is going to be through social media, really driving organic hard, working with influencers and getting a very clear message out there. If I'm going to try and buy mass media, try and buy out of home ads, in-store media, retailer media, it's going to go nowhere and you're going to just kill your budget in 10 seconds. So your key is think differently, and I would find $100,000 to go, how do I make every $1 feel like 10? Your whole business plan would be different. You look at concentrated distribution, heavily upweight physical availability because that makes your brand punch way above its weight. And you do anything you can to encourage trial, assuming your product's good. So if you great new product, tasty, there's generally a market for it, you've done the basics well, then I would upweight the likes of sampling and just getting people to engage with product, of which then some social media amplification and influencer marketing would be the adjunct. I just wouldn't go and buy a bunch of aisle fins in one market in Coles, for example.
There's another customer in all of this that consumers don't necessarily see, and that's the retailer. If I'm a founder and I'm walking into Woolworths or Coles with a new product, very, very proud of it, what does the buyer actually need to see to give me space on that shelf?
Your number one job in that scenario, Adam, is to go and build confidence. Your retailer wants to see confidence from you and a clear objective plan. So a few components to how you do that. Assuming you're a founder and you speak basically on behalf of sales and marketing, logistics, everything else in your business, you want to start by showing them, A, there is a market for it. B, your product or brand is clearly going to appeal to their customer. You've got to anchor the language in terms of their customers, not yours. You both have the same customer at the end of the day. It's your consumers are their customers, but that's the language you should lead with. And then thirdly, you have to speak around category. You have to explain to them very carefully how your particular offering is going to help their customers and how it's going to create a category for them. Then obviously you will benefit from it as well. But if you lead too strongly with your brand, your business agenda, you're just making the sales pitch harder. And then all you're going to get stuck with is the haggle and a conversation for margin. Buyers should know that good brands lead to good category growth, but they don't always. Or they do, but they dismiss it in the name of negotiation. So always get your anchoring right and show them your long-term plan to achieve those things.
Shelf space is finite. For me to be placed up there, someone's got to leave. To what extent should I be building that into my pitch to the supermarkets?
If you have a good plan, your plan objectively should prove that swapping out whatever SKUs they might be on shelf for yours is in the retailer's best interest. Depends on the size of your organization. If you're a larger player, you will have access to the category data through Sakana or the likes. But if you're a founder or a new entrant, you obviously would not have access to that data, or you might have just a snapshot. If you do not have access to that data, I just get back to proving a long-term growth plan and not showing, this is my launch for today. We think it's a cracking idea. Please, please, please list us. Don't do that. Show them, here's our core range. Here's what we're going to do in 12 months' time to lap the number. Here's what we're going to do in year 2 and year 3 to grow beyond that. Here's how our investment with you will grow. If you do that, it just makes a compelling business case that they can swap out the shelf space. Because whether we like it or not, shelf space in Australia and in New Zealand is some of the most competitive in the world. And I've seen it through my whole career, Adam. Great innovation that should last longer on shelf. Even pretty good stuff doesn't make the cut. That's how competitive it is. And I've deleted many brands that should not have been deleted, but as is the nature of our retail. So you have to put a lot of effort into planning for that.
To what extent within that buyer-seller meeting do I need to have volume of stock ready to go or ready to ship? Or is there still the opportunity for me to go out and make the thing and deliver to any orders?
The connection between supply chain and your go-to-market plan cannot be overstated in terms of its importance. Imagine you convince them and it's all great and the buyer's all for it and you go, right, okay, we'll have you in 800 stores in 4 weeks' time for the range review. Thank you, we're a late entrant, but we'll make space for you because we really like you. Can you imagine turning around and saying, oh no, hang on, I need 4 months to make this for you? You're dead. So planning ahead and building your business case for different scenarios will enable this. You cannot approach Coles and Woolies or any other retailer for that matter without the ability to supply them reliably. If you cannot supply them, that is immediate disqualification and there is no chance. Good advice for that would be a low, medium, high scenario. What if we get this level of distribution and medium level and maximum distribution, and just set yourself up for different levels. And please don't go and overexpose yourself and produce more out of sheer faith that you're going to get listed, and then you don't. They will give you a reasonable lead time to manufacture, but you should have the ability to do so.
In that scenario, how do you give retailers confidence that this is going to work?
Confidence comes with good preparation and a long-term planning horizon. They will expect that if you're Coke or Unilever, you're up here, and they expect a certain level of excellence. If you're a smaller entrant and a founder, and this is your first time approaching them, they are way more forgiving. They're still going to negotiate hard with you, but they're not going to have you at the same level. So just take the pressure off. You don't have to be perfect. But what you do need is your preparation in terms of know your numbers, have your ducks in a row, have the ability to supply, understand the market, be across your P&L and your pricing very carefully. Don't have them run circles around you with margin negotiations. But then secondly is the long-term planning horizon. So even for small to medium-sized FMCG players, if you can show them a plan beyond the next 12 months, that is worth its weight in gold. And that is for the marketing function within a business, or if you're a founder, your marketing endeavors, that's where it really pays off. That's where you don't fire all of the bullets in your chamber all at once. That's where you launch a core proposition first. That is why you slowly but surely grow your range, because that allows you to pitch up with a 5-year plan, of which year 1 is awesome, but year 2 is going to be better. If you can do that, you will instill way more confidence than just throwing everything at them and hoping it sticks.
I want to change gears slightly because you've spent much of your career thinking about how products and companies build brands, but you've also become pretty bloody good at building one around James Deysel. You've now written an entire book about it, Limitless LinkedIn. Why did you write the book, and why does personal brand actually matter?
When I speak to my clients at the moment, Adam, everybody has a similar anecdote, and I think everyone listening will find this quite relatable. You had a great career, you've done well, you've been promoted, you've changed companies, everything's fine, but then suddenly the rug pull comes. You didn't see it coming, there's a big restructure, there's a new CEO that cleans house, you might even be quite senior at this stage, and you find yourself made redundant, or you couldn't get that new job you wanted to and you feel stuck. You then go, it's fine, I'm going to work with recruiters, I'm going to do everything they said I should do, and then I'm just going to go find the next thing. And so when you do that and 6 months go by, 8 months go by, a year goes by, your savings reduce and you start getting quite nervous, that's the moment you normally realize, what have I done wrong? And this is unfair. I've done everything the recruiter said I should. I keep on hearing it's a tough market. What am I doing wrong? And the short answer is nothing. You've played by the rules of the game. You've done everything well. You've worked hard your whole life. But people need to realize that the rules of the game have changed, whether we like it or not. The steady state career path and the single lane career path is becoming incredibly hard to maintain. And at some stage, everybody gets a wobble. So my advice is, if you build a brand for yourself and treat yourself in the same way a marketer would treat any other brand, 2 things happen. You're more resilient if you ever find yourself in the situation, that you will not be put out to market and struggle. If you are in that scenario, your chances of getting success quicker is just exponentially higher. But also more positively, opportunities find you even in the good days. You get opportunities that you would not have had, speaking engagements to go and collaborate. People want advisory roles. People want to get onto boards one day. All of that only happens through building a brand. And that is where this came from. The book is merely a resource, because LinkedIn is a communication channel, a broader strategy most of us should have. And honestly, it is for everyone. It is pretty simple. It's easier than you might think. Personal brands make you more resilient. And I do think that the rules of the game have changed in that we need to be able to open up multiple lanes of career growth. But secondly, the good news is social media has changed so much that the ability for us to get our message out there and the ability for us to grow our brands is just so much easier. If you go back 15 years to when social media was fresh and we were all on Facebook together and doing Farmville and those weird quizzes, what superhero are you? That was classic social media 1.0, which is network-based social media. I post, you're my connection, you see my post, you like it, and then so on and so forth. Then it transformed into this broadcast model where you have to build an audience, become a mega influencer, and you broadcast your message to your audience. So one day, if I have 100,000 followers, I can do something with it. The beauty, Adam, is that today's algorithms, for all of the cynicism everyone might hear about it, they're the most democratic they've ever been. Because even if you have 100 connections or 500 connections, if you have a good point of view about something, the algorithm on all social media platforms, including LinkedIn, will then go and find peers in your world who have similar points of view to you and distribute your message to an audience willing to hear you out. So your ability to find an audience and get your message out there has never been easier. The algorithm's awesome at the moment. It's probably the best it's ever been. And now is the time to use it to your advantage.
Who ultimately benefits when somebody's actually building a strong personal brand? The individual themselves or the company that they work for?
Both. I have to remind both companies and individuals that allowing people to build their own brands and their own careers within the organization is a sign of strength. When I advise companies, I advise them that company pages on LinkedIn in particular don't get the same reach because, look, LinkedIn is still a business, right? So if they see you're a large multinational business with big budgets, why wouldn't you pay them a little bit for your corporate ads? But if you're individuals within the business, LinkedIn is really open to organic reach and messages finding the right audience. So imagine you had a mid-sized business, you might have 300 people at head office in your market. What's going to be more effective? Posting something from the corporate page and hoping the message gets out there, or doing that, but also having maybe 100 of those 300 head office employees passionately posting around their experiences, what they love about the company, pride in your products, employee engagement days. What do you think is going to have more of an impact? It's a compounding benefit both for the company and for those individuals. And my personal leadership philosophy has always been develop people and allow them to grow their careers. It's a sign of insecurity if you try and suppress people and hide them from the world. If you work for a company that does that, think twice.
I've certainly been guilty of this where I've had a thought that I could have kept to myself, but I thought, no, I think it's something that I should share with someone else because it might prove as useful to them as it was for me. And then you post something out there. A lot of people would probably stop before getting to that point because they feel, who wants to hear from me? That feeling of imposter syndrome. To what extent do people just need to overcome that and back themselves and just put themselves out there?
People think it's an introvert-extrovert thing. And if you're extroverted, this is for you. It's easy. I mean, it's easy to do public speaking. It's easy to go and talk to other people. You enjoy it. But I might be introverted. I might not enjoy putting myself out there. So this is clearly not for me. The fact is that is not true. Every human being, whether you're a massive extrovert, a big introvert, an ambivert, somewhere in between, and then across cultures for that matter, we all share the same insecurities, myself included. It is easier than you think to overcome. It is so quick for you to push through that bit of discomfort and get used to the fact that you are putting content out there. And LinkedIn in particular is probably the safest space to do this because luckily most people are smart enough to know that I'm a professional. I'm on LinkedIn. If I comment on somebody's post, I need to be professional and have a level of decorum. It's not Reddit. It's not TikTok. So the odds of you getting trolled or the odds of you getting judged are actually very slim. And I've seen this for myself as well. Once you put it out there, you'd actually find an audience and you'd find it very heartening how well people will respond to your message. So just push through the discomfort and it is always worth it. And once you come out the other side, you'll realize everyone else has done it as well.
If you make a post and you feel perhaps you didn't get the reaction you were hoping for, is that a sign that you should just persevere?
Oh, hell yes. If you're posting on LinkedIn, please be consistent. Do not look at the next 12 hours. Look at the next 12 months. If you look at it through that lens, and especially if you get into a cadence of posting regularly, not everybody has to post 5 days a week. You might post twice a week or 3 times a week. Whatever you can make work consistently, please do that. It's when you post and you do it for maybe 2 weeks and you don't get a reaction because you're pretty new, but you're still finding your tribe and you're finding your community. Of course, your feedback's going to be a bit slow and it might not happen overnight. But the individuals who can persist and realize that, fine, even if a post is a complete disaster, nobody likes it, that's fine. I'll just try again next week and the week after that. Everybody's busy with their own lives. Nobody is looking at you that closely to care. But if you do this for 12 months, you'll be surprised how there's this upward slope and this upward trajectory. So please don't get distracted by short-term setbacks. If you take a step back and you look at it through a marketing lens, you go, okay, what am I really doing? All I'm doing is marketing communication, but for me as a brand. If I did that as a marketer, I'd go, right, there is a marketing funnel because LinkedIn, I'm marketing to other people, whether I'm doing it to promote my business or to promote myself. So I need to fill the top of my funnel. So that 80% top of the funnel awareness, that is your number one job. Impressions do matter over time. Shall I panic if I have a post with very low impressions? No, don't worry. But if you accumulate enough impressions with consistency over many, many months, your cumulative impressions over time is a very useful way for you to gauge whether you're making progress. But beyond that, a more useful metric also would be your comments. LinkedIn thrives on comments. If you can drive rich engagement, it's just a sign that your content's good enough to start conversation. That is a very strong signal. Then LinkedIn starts distributing your content.
What matters more when it comes to content? Consistency or quality?
Easy one, consistency. Because quality gets your head trapped in this minefield again of every post should be perfect. Every post should perform. Every post has to be curated. If I made a spelling mistake, people are going to laugh at me. You should do your best to have good quality content, a content plan, some consistency in what you're saying, and you should still deliver something of value. But consistency matters way more. So if you do 100 posts in a year, if 30 of them were decent, but they didn't do great, but the other 70 were at least average to good, you'd be far better off than doing 30 posts of which you toiled away trying to get them just right and perfect, and they perform more or less at the same level anyway. Prioritize consistency over time. It's just much easier if you have a consistent cadence with the algorithm to go, right, James posts more or less at this time on these days. I kind of know what to do with his posts. If the algorithm looked at me and said, okay, well, it's Monday, the guy posted, skips a few days, jumps back on Friday, then skips for another week, then jumps back on. It's a bit harder, but more importantly, consistency of message. Figure out your positioning. It doesn't have to be super complex, but who are you? What is your key message? And then build a very simple content strategy for yourself. To go, what are 2 or 3 things I like talking about that I can add value on and have a point of view on? And I'm going to share that.
So when we're less focused on quality, the temptation can be for us to take shortcuts. LinkedIn is now awash with content that's either AI assisted or completely AI generated. Do you think that matters at all?
AI slop is something LinkedIn is openly against. They don't mind you using a bit of AI. They don't mind you working with AI to think of ideas. They're also not necessarily against you using AI to do a great image for your post. That is not a massive penalty. But what they really don't want is people trying to be efficient, have AI write the posts for them. People use plugins and AI writes the post, publishes the post, does the comments. If you think about it, it just dehumanizes the platform. The probability of your post not getting distributed would be higher if it's clearly AI, right? So if you have a purely AI written post and there's a pattern of that, the odds of the algorithm not distributing your post to a wide audience far higher. It does correct for that. And I have seen that for myself as well. When people then revert back to human written, their post and performance improves. I'd advise people, please, please, please don't do that. Use AI to assist you if you need to, but write in your own style and just be yourself. Be as humanly possible.
To what extent does my online personal brand need to reflect my in real life personal brand?
Consistency is a bit of a theme. So yes, consistent posting cadence, consistency of message, but please, consistency across your ecosystem is very, very important. Whether we like it or not, everything we're doing is leaving an increasingly big footprint. It's just the world we live in. Our online activity, the things we engage with, everything leaves a tiny footprint behind. You can either be kind of creeped out by it and go, oh, I don't like this, or you can go, right, how do I use this productively? So yes, LinkedIn is one tool. I go and be very consistent with all the principles, but then there's the rest of your ecosystem. If you have a website, if you have any other social media activity more broadly, if you're doing anything that gets published online in terms of quotes and media, or whatever you might do, all of that forms a very clear picture of who you are. And anyone listening to this would probably already very actively be using a large language model like Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. I always encourage people, go and do this right now. Go into a private mode or a different account that's not yours and just go and look yourself up. We all used to Google ourselves and you go, okay, kind of get a few hits. But if you now go and put that through an LLM, you'll very clearly see the portrait that everyone else online would see of you. And then from there, it's very easy for you to now change that portrait if you don't like what you're seeing, or enhance it if you feel you're on the right track. And yes, LinkedIn, by the way, tends to be the number 2, if not the number 1 source where the likes of ChatGPT get personal citations. So please think about your whole ecosystem and realize that everything is leaving a footprint.
If there's one thing every business leader or marketer watching this should take away from our conversation, whether they're trying to build a product brand, a company brand, or their own personal brand, what would it be?
I can give one piece of advice. I tell everyone, focus on your customer. If you're led by your customer, everything else is going to be exponentially easier. The same thing applies to you if you're building a personal brand. Know who your audience are and who you're building your personal brand for, and the rest will fall into place. You start with the market orientation and work your way back. Success will likely follow.
What I think comes through really strongly from our conversation is that whether we're talking about a product sitting on a supermarket shelf or a person showing up in somebody's LinkedIn feed, a lot of the fundamentals are remarkably similar. You need to understand who you're trying to reach. You need to give them a reason to care. You need to be recognizable, memorable, and authentic. And ultimately, you need to give people a reason to choose you rather than one of the countless alternatives competing for their attention. And perhaps as AI makes it easier for us all to create more, say more, and show up more often, having something genuinely interesting and distinctive to say only becomes more important. James, thank you so much for joining me.
It was great to have a chat, and look forward to the next one.